Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. This is our first episode of 2022, so I am very excited to bring back good friend, multiple guest, Joel Hooks. How you doing, man?
Doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to have you back. We always do something wild whenever you're on the show, so I'm looking forward to it.
Show's
Um,
usually fun, but I try to keep it all business, Jason. There's no
uh,
whimsy here today, folks.
we're not
You're
here to
gonna
have
get
fun.
some.
We're yeah.
No, that's fun. You really got to define fun in your own way, and this is like how I define my. This is how I entertain myself and make money on the internet. So that's what we're.
Yeah, well, actually, I would love to. I feel like you have a sort of collection of things that you do. So for folks who aren't familiar with your work, do you want to give us a bit of a background?
I'm a co-founder of Egghead.io. So we've been working on that for the last 8 years, which is my record length for a job of any sort. So it's actually kind of unusual for me to like work a job for that long. And it's weird because I've been building the same software for 8 years. So Egghead.io is my primary line of business. We work with other partners to launch course products like Kent C. Dodds. We helped him with Epic React, and Dan Abramov and Maggie Appleton. We help them with just JavaScript. So we do some of that on the side, taking what we've learned at Egghead and applying that to like course launches and like product launches for programming experts, basically. So we do a lot of that these days as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, Ben, the chat. All I had to do was turn it off and turn it on again, and it's back now. Thank you for the sub, Chris. 30 months. Oh my goodness. Um, it kind of blows my mind that I've even been doing this show for 30 months, but
Yeah, it
all
is like
right.
that's a it's just relentless. Like the way you produce shows just blows my mind because I've done a podcast and like I made it like a year and a half and that was
I
but it's like it's just like you have to like the steady habit of the thing is really quite interesting.
It's I swear it's the secret to everything, man, is you just keep showing up, right? Like
Keep
you
showing up, do
keep
the
showing
thing.
up, keep doing the thing, and then also like find people to help. I have like Aiden helps me with the scheduling, and he runs the website and the Twitter account, and I've got Chris helping me with the editing of the shows and like getting them posted up on YouTube. And I think without that stuff, there's no way I'd keep doing it. It's
Yeah, I
just
mean when you start a thing, you have to kind of do it all because
yeah.
nobody even knows what you're doing and there's no example of it and you have it in your head and you're like, well, this is what it needs to be, so you're making it. And then as you bring you figure out what it is, and you can bring collaborators in and tell them, well, this
Mm-hmm.
is what and that's the like that's always been a challenge. That's a daily challenge for me still, but it's like your show, right? Like and have the vision. You're kind of the CEO of Learn with Jason, so you have
Mm-hmm.
to like figure that out over time. But when you start bringing in people to help, it becomes more fun and interesting too, honestly.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's different ways to bring in help, right? So like I hired help for the things that were I don't even know how to start automating, but I also automated a bunch of stuff, and that's something that I actually learned from you was how to make the robots do some of the work around like automation and marketing and things like that. So
Yeah.
and that's kind of what we're talking about today is this automation
Mm-hmm.
and how to make some things just go away so that you don't have to think about them. So an example of what I've done on Learn with Jason is I use Calendly to book, right?
Right.
And whenever somebody books through my Calendly link, it automatically, like I have Zapier set up to detect new calendar events, and then it automatically invites the captioning service. Like I've got Jordan on today doing captioning, and it also alerts Aiden who does the actual booking part, and kind of kicks off this whole initial setup so that all I have to do is write a description for the episode. And that is, that's really, really nice to just have that stuff happen. It's a few clicks, stuff that I don't have to do. It saves me 5 minutes an episode, but I'm at close to 300 episodes now, and that's a lot of minutes saved.
I don't think it's even about the minutes for me because like you are saving minutes and you have minutes to spare probably, right? Like there's minutes of your day where
Mm,
you could fit that in. But what it does is it removes like a layer of tedium from the process to where you'll actually do it, right? Like because like
right.
doing that same stuff over and over again. I do one danger is like jumping in like I'm going to automate this right away.
Right.
Like, like folks get in there and it's like, I'm going to build robots instead of doing the actual work. And I think that's like an important thing to understand, because I know like you did this manually before you ever automated it,
Hmm.
and like getting in there and like figuring out what you actually need. And when you're your own user, like talking to your users is kind of that's a challenge, right? Because we if we can lie to anybody, we can lie to ourselves,
Mm,
and like anything that follows that. But you know what I mean? Like it's like the just as programmers, like it's just easy to jump into the code and try to automate stuff really early,
for
versus
sure.
like let's come up with an actual process that works and do it long form, and then slice the valuable pieces off of that, instead of like trying to like jump to a solution, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So actually that's I mean, how do you make that call? Like, because there is a spectrum of you got to do it for yourself. You got to learn how the thing works. You can delegate it to a person that you pay, and then you can try to build an automation, and that automation comes with, the upside of the thing just happens automatically, and the downside of you got to keep that automation working and maintenance, all those things. Um, what are the kind of heuristics you're using when you're making the call about, do you do it yourself? Do you pay somebody else? Do you build a robot?
Good question. Like if I could give a definitive answer, I'd probably be doing a lot better. I have no idea, right? Like to me, it's like I'm always just trying to like I kind of play it by ear, and I do everything long form, and I think I over indexed on automation and trying to um I've done it a few times, right? Like where I'll build a
Mm,
process, I'll build an extensive process, and it's based on my experience and assumptions, versus like going and when I say, like talking to your users, and it's difficult when you are your only user or whatever, but
right.
like if I'm doing it for a business, I know that what I need to do first is like find out what problems people actually have before I go in and like tell them that here's a solution, which is a very push model, right? Like instead of like getting in there and talking to people and what sort of problems are you actually having? And a lot of my job these days is like supporting my team that way, to where I'm, like what do they need in
Mm,
terms of daily process? What do they need to like have automated, and what's important for them to do their jobs better? And then they're, the idea would be that they would then support the users, and we were building kind of a layered step of that kind of support, because like when you're managing or leading teams, like that's your job, right? Like you are there
hmm.
to support the team so they can better support the end users or customers that they're servicing,
Yeah.
whatever, however those layers might be. Hopefully there's only a few. uh,
Yeah, well, I've heard this described on, like, on big companies. They'll spin up a whole like internal tools team, and the whole job of the internal tools team is treat the developers on the team as the customer and just build stuff to make them more effective.
yeah.
And yeah, so that it is interesting, because I, like, for me at least, I found that I also have the tendency to try to automate early. I think it might just be like the toxic trait of developers is we're like, oh, I can automate this task.
Yeah,
I think
it's
there's an
fun.
XKCD that rips this apart pretty handily. But the the problem that I've run into is that, for me at least, a lot of the things I do aren't repetitive enough to be truly automated. Like,
Hmm.
yes, I respond to a lot of emails, but none of my emails are like copy paste, right? So the only thing that really is automatable for me is Learn with Jason, because every episode of Learn with Jason, it's like it's on a schedule. It has the same format. We do the same thing with a different guest twice a week. And if it wasn't for that very specific, very predictable process, I don't think it would make sense to automate, because the robots can't make a judgment call about, oh, well, we're going to actually, this time it's not going to be, a two guests, it's going to be four guests or whatever. Like, you can't do that. It's got to be a very, like, very structured. And that rigidity comes from, just doing the show enough times that I realized, like, I don't need to make the format of the show interesting. The content is what's interesting.
Right.
So let's.
Well, I mean, and at the end of the day, it's like, okay, you have a checklist, and it's a checklist that you use every single time. And, the steps that never change, that's the stuff that you can automate. And you have to like run through the checklist and refine that. And then that's where you can identify, right? Like parts of the process that now lend themselves well to automation and capturing. Because it's like, you wouldn't want to, I don't know. It's like when you have users coming to your website, and like say you're gathering emails, right? Like you have a new
Hmm.
business and you're gathering some emails, and you're getting 10 signups a week.
Hmm.
At that point, I can literally Google each one of those individuals, reach out to them, ask them, like, why are you here? What are you doing? What's your into here? How are you solving this problem currently? Like, ask them questions. And when you get to 100 users, your ability to do that for each one
Right.
gets dramatically lowered. So, can I do a survey question now? So I'll automate and add a survey question, and then that will put them, are you a developer or a designer, for instance, and you can ask them that, and then you can. I'm really only trying to talk to developers right now, so I'm going to get 10 of those on the phone every week versus every single person that signs up, and you're slowly, and then over 500 people on your list, right? Like as you gain momentum and you kind of hone in the solution or whatever it is you're doing to help those people, that's when you can really start thinking about automation. And I'm talking about like automating emails and onboarding sequences and that kind of thing when I do this, just because we're gonna talk about customer relationship managers and all that fun stuff today.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about like the specifics of today. So what we have written down is that we're going to do marketing automation with Customer IO and Nextjs. I know that there's a ton of stuff that can be done. I know that you've shown me some of the systems that you use in terms of personalizing experiences based on what people do in email. So today, what did you want to tackle as our project?
It's purely technical. I don't have a lot of like from the marketing perspective, like the strategy. One of the things that always aggravates me is when I go to a website that I'm a subscriber or a member of, and the homepage is it looks like I'm a new customer, right? Like you go there and it's like click here for your dashboards in the corner, but it's still the marketing front page, and that's how it was on Egghead, and it was difficult for us. We actually took the opposite approach where we didn't have a marketing homepage and gave everybody the same kind of like, here's all the content, like our curated content section. And what I would prefer is if you come to our page, like what can we do at that point to like understand who you are? Do we actually know you? Why are you coming to the site? Are you one of our instructors? Are you a customer? There's all these questions that we could use to present a varied homepage. And like if you're using any modern system, you can do that by, I use React, so you can have a use effect hook that checks and sees, are they logged in, and after load, it would load them in. But the problem with that is like you get flashing and stuff, right? Like it's just the user experience isn't that great, or you redirect them and the URL changes, or something kind of unexpected happens to the user that kind of just like diminishes their overall experience in what they're doing. But with Next 12, Next.js 12, they introduced middleware. So you can write this middleware, and the middleware actually runs on before the page is served. So it's at the server level, it's edge distributed, depending on where you're deploying to, and you get like this really nice ability to intercept requests, do some sort of work, and then write the page that responds. So you can pick and choose kind of what page you want to respond, or have like a fall through default that everybody ends up going to if they don't match something. So we're using Customer IO, which I like quite a bit. It makes just a nice, flexible, it has good automations, and kind of lets you do transactional and marketing emails, meaning you can send receipts and that sort of thing,
right,
or marketing materials, because there's like legally there's two different distinctions between the types of emails you're sending and what you need to do that. So we've been using them a lot, and I like them a lot, and they have a pretty good API, and it kind of allows you to outside of your own user database, capture user information and kind of use their kind of existing way that they attach to users in the browser and keep information. And even if they're not logged in, I can like know who they are because they clicked on a link in our email, that sort of thing, which is really,
oh yeah. Well,
that's really cool, because then I can capture that and then display, like I know you're a customer, like we don't need to sell to you. We can instead, just ask you to log in so you can access your stuff. That sort of thing.
What you're bringing up something that I think is really interesting, because I know that data collection makes developers queasy sometimes. They're like, oh no, put everything in private mode, no data collection at all. And that's for good reason. Like a lot of the stuff that companies are doing feels really shady to like scrape as much personal data as they can. But I think that, that's the unfortunate like far end of that spectrum, because in the middle, there's a lot of really cool stuff that we can do. I love the fact that when I go to a website, if that website knows who I am it shows me like, go to your dashboard instead of sign up now, here's a deal. Like, well, I already paid you, I can't get that deal anymore, it doesn't apply to me. Show me stuff that's relevant.
Yep.
Or if I have gone through part of the site, show me like what's next. You know, you did like step one of our thing. We know that now. And when you go to this part of the docs, we're actually going to surface this section of the docs that you need, or whatever it is. Like, you can actually make a really personalized experience, and that's useful. That's not slimy. Like, you can be evil, of course. Like, any tool can be used for evil, but I really, really like it when it's used to usefully personalize.
Yeah, and I mean, it's because it's manipulation at the end of the day, and there's like, you know, like the white hat, gray hat, black hat style approach to thinking about that, where, you know, like I can be doing this in a nefarious way where I'm trying to manipulate you into to some ends that only serves me and doesn't serve you. But the way I look at it, and I think where it gets really sketchy is when you start selling and sharing the data across
Yes.
providers. To me, like, that's, you know, like they didn't request that, and it's all about consent and not tricking people into a terms of service. So like we always like double opt in, and we want to do that sort of thing with people when we're marketing to them, just to, you know, like verify that you know, we understand what's about to happen. So like you're signing up for this, and we're going to send this and try to be useful and not just sell you stuff. So I think that's super important, and especially, you know, it's like the consent part of it, which you know, just generally. Oh my gosh, I got started thinking about consent and I lost my train of thought.
No, it was good. I think you know, so I think that's just a good like couching of everything that we're talking about here. What we're doing here is not talking about getting, you know, data and using psychological tricks to, you know, hey, use this one weird trick to make more money. This is very much about like, we can interact with our users in ways that, like, if you have opted into my list, then you've said, hey, I want information for you. If you click on a list on something from my email, I know something about your intent because I wrote that email for a purpose. And if you express that intent, I can then customize the content. Like, I can make the things I build significantly more useful by just using the information that somebody's giving me in a very consensual way. Right? Yeah. Like, we're not buying a list from Facebook and trying to do pattern matching to figure out, you know, what you might pay us for. We're very much saying like, hey, you said you are into JavaScript. I'm going to show you JavaScript. That's a really interesting way of making our apps more useful that is beneficial to the user. You know,
it's pretty straightforward. It's like they've signed up for that. And at the end of the day, and I remembered my previous thought, like, this is how I think about it. And I love state machines. I use Xstate. Like, every application I write ends up with a state machine. I think they're useful even at like a low scale. But if you think about a user and their overall experience with your product or whatever, even like your blog, they're in a state machine at any given time. They are in a state, and they want to transition from one state to the next. And if you can understand, you know, like, these are the available transitions and present them, where it's pretty accurate. You know, it's not ever going to be really perfect, but you can say, well, you know, I know this about you. You like this, this, and this. Here's, you know, and this is what you previously have interacted with. Like, here's the next state, or here's the, you know, selection of states that you have to choose from, and what we can do to like help you get where it is you're trying to go. Because nobody, like, for us, nobody wakes up in the mornings like, oh, I need to go watch a course today. Like, that isn't what they think. It isn't, right? Like, they use our site because they have something going on in their lives where they need to like pick up that. And some people do watch it like Netflix. That's fine. Like, if that's your entertainment, like please, like, indulge. But for most of us, it's like, oh, I'm trying to solve a specific problem with technology, and there's this course that is, you know, like, the promise is that it can get me from A to B, and that's what people are doing. So why are they there? Why are they interacting with your site at this time? What's going on in their lives, and how can we help them? Is always like an interesting, you know, like, trying to be useful and trying to like present in terms of what they may want versus kind of the universal thing, like dropping them into the soup.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, and like, nothing wrong with soup, but like, a lot of times I want the meal to be catered to me. Like, you know, sometimes you want to go on an adventure and just dive in and see what's out there, but like, most of the time I got a goal. Like, you know, I show up on Egghead because I am working on a project and I find a thing that I want to build and I've never built it before. And so I go to Egghead and I'm like, I search the thing. And the better the personalization is, the more likely it is that the first thing I see is the course I want to watch that helps me solve that problem that I have right now. At which point I go, man, Egghead is the best. It always shows me exactly what I need. I solve my problem. I move on with my life. You know, it's like money well spent to have that Egghead subscription. And I think that's the kind of personalization that we're really looking for. How do I walk away from any interaction with a web property feeling like I just got exactly what I needed? None of my time was wasted. Nobody asked me for things I didn't need. I basically showed up and it effectively read my mind because I gave enough information through my actions and intent that it didn't have to ask me like, do you like JavaScript? Like it already knew it did. Yeah. So, okay, I automatically filtered the results to prioritize JavaScript. Like, great, perfect. This is all really, really helpful to me.
Well, and that's a really great example, right? Like it's like you're personalizing, but you're really just like respecting what they've done in your time. It's that the kind of the don't don't make me think. Yeah, that book is like the kind of the quintessential idea just in the title, right? Like that carries so much weight in terms of how to interact with users. And I also want to say most of these ideas, for me, like my primary source is Brennan Dunn, and he captures like all of this really in a very detailed way in the book Mastering ConvertKit, which to me is like the absolute best kind of really value-driven marketing automation that I've ever seen. And it's ConvertKit, but I apply the principles in Customer IO and Drip. It doesn't matter, like whatever platform you're on, his stuff is really fantastic. And you know, like if you want it, like, oh, that's really interesting to me, dive into his work, because there's some really great ideas in there.
For sure. Yeah. And we'll those will be linked in the show notes. I just dropped them in the chat as well. All right. So I'm excited to actually see this in action. So let's switch over into our pairing view. And before we get started, I'm going to just take a quick moment to shout out to the sponsors. We've got Jordan from White Coat Captioning right now is here making this whole show more accessible by doing the live captions. You can find those on the homepage of the site, learnwithjason.dev. And that's possible because of our sponsors. We've got Netlify, Fauna, and Auth0 all kicking in to cover the costs there. And that means a lot to me. We're hanging out with Joel today. Make sure you go give him a follow on Twitter. And we're going to be using Nextjs and customer.io to build some stuff. So what's my first step here? Like, what's the first thing I should do if we want to get going?
So we didn't set up anything.
No,
so
we're
I figured
empty folder.
We can use create next app, and we're going to make a next app. And they have some starters, and one of them is with Tailwind CSS, which is a pretty good one. I always use, so it's npx create -next -app at latest.
Okay, npx create, if I can spell it, next app at latest.
Space --ts. I use TypeScript. And then, so there's some examples. And do you think it'd be useful to start with one with like Tailwind or whatever set up? Do you use Tailwind?
I don't. Are we
going to do any layout? That's going to be all on you. So like you're in charge of visuals and whimsy.
Let's see how much time we have to do any visuals and or.
It doesn't even matter for what we're trying to accomplish. We can just use the stock page and
let's start with the stock page and see how it goes. And then I put in the name of a folder here, right?
Well, I'm going to say ---- example with Tailwind CSS because it's the only way I'll ever accomplish anything. So,
is it like that?
Yeah, that's it. And then space and whatever the folder name is.
Okay, let's call this marketing automation. Yeah.
Yeah, and this just goes to there.
Okay. And it's creating the folder, doing all the things. Get all the types. You know, I feel like I fought it for a long time, and I do like TypeScript. Then I need to npm. It already installed everything, so we can just run dev.
I think so. Hopefully it worked. I actually tested it just to make sure that I wouldn't be lying to you.
All right, so we have, let's see, that opened in the wrong thingy. Here's our site. So we've got a basic site here. All good. Yeah. And then I'm going to open this up so that we can look at it. And then I'll start it again. All right. So we've got a basic site. Here's our pages. We've got our index page. Um, kind of leave that all as is. But if I want to make a change, I can say like hello chat, save it, and it's there. So we're in great shape. We've got ourselves a hot reloading app. Everything is good.
Can we make just another page that has a different H1?
Yeah, let's do it. Do you want
So
to?
we could even, and you could even copy and paste just as a base, but
Okay.
just let's call this one welcome, or I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Cool. So we'll go there, get this. And for this one, let's just simplify it all the way down to just an H1.
Yeah.
So we'll go all the way down to here. And then we'll get rid of all of the, maybe we'll keep the head. And we can go over to welcome. Okay, so now we've got a basic site.
So one of the principles here is that any page we make is a page that you can actually just generally get to, like Google index it, whatever. You could, like exclude it if you wanted to, but it doesn't matter. Like this is a viable page. We have like welcome, and then we can just have our root for right now, and we could extend that if we want more pages. We can think about that.
That's what I did wrong. Okay, so we've got a simple site, no bells and whistles on it. Got our default style sheet and.
Did you change the text on them, or do they say the same thing?
Oh, yeah, let's change it. Okay, so there's our welcome page. Head back, got our hello chat.
In my to-do list, this was create a fun homepage. So I think we've accomplished that. That one. It is extremely fun. So we can now we're kind of set up, and we can display 2 pages. In Nextjs 12, they introduced the idea of middleware.
Okay.
So we want to create some middleware in between the request for our homepage, and the way that you do this is inside of pages. You create this file, and the name of that file is _middleware.ts.
Okay.
So one thing I am not sure of is if middleware runs in a local environment when you run npm run dev. So I'd be curious about that, and the only way we can find out is to actually run some middleware. And when I do this, I'm always going to go to the Nextjs docs, specifically the GitHub repo, look in the examples, and they have like a ton of middleware examples. And like I'm always going to go like find something and cut and paste the middleware example if I'm learning a new feature. There's no world where I don't just grab the simple example. So we can do that. We want to like get the hello world going and see if this even functions in our local environment.
Okay, so let's see if it picked it up. Doesn't say anything, but if it worked, it's gonna. Okay, there it is. So there's a middleware. And this is the interesting thing about this, because with what we've done here, returning a new response, we're basically saying we don't care what's on the page. Just delete it all, replace it with this. And so, we can put...
We've officially ruined our fun homepage.
And does this... does that do what we want?
Probably.
No, it's plain text. So we would have to actually set it as text HTML and things like that.
And so that's a response. So that's like if you go to MDN and look at the response, that's a core API, right? Like that's something that we just get with Node or the browser in JavaScript. The response is a type. So it's typically you're building a response, and you can use this particular object and return a response.
Yeah. So we let's see, how would we do that? We get a new response, and then we can. How do we create one though? It's all showing us how to use them.
Honestly, we're gonna and then so you also, I think, and I believe when we imported, I don't know, it might just be types. Did it have in our actual code?
It did. Yeah, we did get.
So we're not using next response yet. So they actually have a helper called next response. So you can use just a normal response and return that, but we'll get pretty quick into using next response. But what we want to do is like let's get our page back. Is what we want to accomplish. So inside of the middleware function, if you just say like const response, or we're going to use let because we're actually going to change the response. So let response equals next response dot next. And what this does, I honestly haven't even looked up the docs for why this works. You don't need any arguments. You can just call next.
Okay.
And we're going to return that. So return that response.
Why is it yelling at me? It was imported using import type. That's what.
Yeah, that needs to be on its own line because those other two are types. So just next response needs to be by itself.
Oh wait, this one by itself, and this one.
I'm totally not used to that error message, but I've seen it a lot in the last couple of months.
Right.
So what this should do is just return us back to normal. Like hey, there we are. Okay. So that's just grabbing the response and saying like next, like what's the, and I would read that probably and see what's actually going on. It was just what the example said, and it works. It just basically gives you that raw response that we're looking for. So at this point, like I'm setting up a switch statement. So we want to do something, and this is an issue. So if you've done this at the root, if you set a middleware at the root, let's go try to make, well, it would work better if it was broken. So we can maybe return a response or something. Just the problem here is it nests, or it's how would you say it, if it's all the way down your page tree, like every page in your entire tree is going to run this middleware, everything under it. And because this is at the top level and we're dealing with our root page, it's actually trickier than if you're in like a subfolder, because only the stuff in the subfolder would be affected. So this is actually going to affect our entire app, which isn't what we want. We want to be able to like only affect the top one. And the easy way to do that is with it's going to be an if. And we're going to look at, and we have the request. So we have the next request there that's coming in. So if request.nextURL.pathname equals just /. Yeah. So now we could, and you could test this by making a subfolder called test and putting an index in there and running it and seeing that this does not affect it. And that's like, like I always try to verify that sort of thing just to make sure, because this is, we're at the top level. So this can return. And that's a good idea.
So if we do it like this, I got to do a new response. Then this one should give us nothing, right? But if I go back to the home page, if I can click this, right? We're top level. So now we've got only one page being affected. That's good.
Another problem here, and this is strictly because we're in the root and we're trying to affect the home page, because the problem is that we show the user the marketing site and not their dashboard is the core of that. A problem here is that anything like a fave icon or an images folder or anything that's essentially in your public folder, like your sitemap, like everything like that, is now going to return your whatever it is you set up. So it would, like previously when we had the response, you get that for your sitemap, for instance.
That's a good point.
So can I just use the chat? How do I do this? I'll send it to you this way.
Okay.
I'm pasting regex in your Twitch chat. So up at the top, I'm going to set this const, and it's public file, and this is the regex, and I cut and pasted this originally, and it just works. So there we are. And what this is, what we're going to do is we're going to do kind of a just a test. So once we get that under response, we're going to say if public file dot test, and then we're going to say the same request.nextURL.pathname return response.
Okay.
So like this is our default, right? Like if this is some sort of public file, now we can get our fave icon back. Now we can, get that would be like any style sheets. Like there's all sorts of things like mischief. And we're actually making a lot of mischief, like doing this at the top level, to be honest. And so some of this is mitigating that. And I learned most of this the hard way. I'm just throwing it out there as we go through, because just the nature of this. This is, like I said, it's a lot simpler if you're somewhere else, but the top level is a great place to start, and you can use these techniques elsewhere. But like if I was in a subfolder, I wouldn't need the public file because I'm not going to have that
Right.
in those routes. That this is
It
only valid because we're at the top level.
Yes, and to for anybody who's not familiar with the what the regex means, we're basically saying anything that ends in a like a dot something extension. Because
Yeah,
this is the
thanks for
end of
explaining that,
the.
because I wasn't familiar either. But
So this means the end of the string. This is 0 or more characters, and this is an escaped period. So like in this, thing.jpg matches, thing doesn't. So this would get passed straight through, and then this would move on to the next rule.
very impressed with that explanation. All right, so we've got that. We've got our two safeguards. We aren't going to serve any public files, and we're getting into the path name. Now is kind of where it gets interesting, because we're at the root, and what we want to do. Let's just like go in and open the browser up in the Dev Tools.
Browser
We're gonna
Dev Tools. Let's do it.
and we're gonna go over and application and cookies,
Cookies.
and we want to for this site. So localhost, and this point, let's just create one, and we're going to call it welcome, and it's just going to say true.
How do you? There's a way to do this.
There is. Usually, I just click the second line as the blank line under the first line.
Oh, well, that's easier than I thought it was going to be. Sorry, what did you want it to be?
We'll just say welcome. The cookie name will be welcome, and then true or one or anything, literally.
Okay. That's that should all be good. We'll leave the rest of it out for now. Okay.
All right. So back in our code, now we have a cookie, and normally you'd write that from someplace else, right? Like you're not gonna users aren't gonna write cookie. Well, most users. I write a lot of cookies in my personal life, but now we want to check, and the way we can do that, the request actually carries a really nice object called cookies. So request.cookies. And this is a next request. So like if you're dealing with a browser request object, you're not going to get this. And then we're going to use the square bracket notation to access an object with the text, and we're going to say welcome. And for me, I'm going to console log this just to see if it comes through. Like that's always my move.
Okay, so that will show up. Let's go here, and then it's going to show up in this console log, right?
Should, yeah. Did you refresh?
Did I refresh? I'm going to save.
And are you on the root page?
Am I on the root page? I was not on the root page.
Yeah, so it's working as expected. If you're on welcome, this stuff doesn't happen, right? Like you were where we wanted you to be.
Mm-hmm.
Did it log, or did it say?
It did, yeah. It's logged true down here.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm off screen. That's why. Occluded. Cool. So now you can start thinking about this, right? Like one, we're on the server.
Mm-hmm.
When we're setting those cookies, right? Like you can set them as secure. If you're on like locally, it doesn't matter. But like if we're on a server, we want them to be secure. I'm usually going HTTP only, so we can't read that. Like we're not going to be able to read this cookie necessarily from the client.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to, like set it up to where it's as kind of, like a nice, safe, secure cookie. We're not sharing it around. We just are writing that for our own uses. So we didn't do that here, but like typically that's what I'm going to do. But what's interesting is if it's a server cookie, you can read that in these requests, and then like you can intercept that, so you can read and write these cookies, and then like in cookies have been around for a long time, and they're pretty well documented, and but they're really useful for this kind of thing. And that's how like you're storing sessions, you're storing that kind of thing. And we're gonna basically put some data in the browser cookie that we can read on the server side, and then adjust the page accordingly. So when we get that, we can go in and add another if statement, and we're going to look and see if welcome is true, and then we're going to change our response.
Okay, so I'm gonna do a little bit of like, so we don't end up in the like bracket hell.
You're gonna refactor a little bit.
I'm gonna refactor a little bit, because what we can do here is we can return the response, right? And then that means we can put this one over here, and we can say, if, and am I gonna?
That's actually going to go in the if statement above. And I'm going to
So
switch. We're going to switch it, and I'm going to use a little switch statement trick that Kyle Shevlin taught me.
okay.
But that goes in there where you are saying if next URL equals / that we want to, that's where we're going to check the cookie. So we don't really care about that cookie. We can just copy that whole if into the
like same place, or we get
no, like in the body of the if statement. Like we're going to check and see if it's the root page. And then inside of that, we want to check and see what our cookie value is.
Got it. Okay. So I'll undo my refactor then. And let's check if it's the cookie, and then we're here. All right. So if
and
we're
that
here,
Boolean that's a pro move right there. You can tell Jason's been doing this a while. And I don't know, after you program JavaScript for any length of time, like the defensive measures that you take against JavaScript, this is one of them.
and my reasoning for that is that this I'm pretty sure is a string, and so you have to
always is. You
convert
have to
it from a
them.
string to whatever the thing is.
So this is where this gets really cool. So now we can say if this is the case, if welcome is true, we want to say response equals next response dot rewrite. And that's saying it's going to rewrite the page, and it's going to rewrite it with the response it gets from the following URL. We're going to say / welcome.
Oh, that okay. Okay, cool things just happened.
Yeah, and we can just refresh now and see what happens for us. So this is the core of it. This is like at the end of the day, like if you can do this, now you can literally do anything that you want, and there's some restrictions there, but like you can literally do anything you want, and serve different. So you can think of this, and we can just go to the switch statement, and I use switch true.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen this. So like just below the if, let's state not
below
inside of that. Yeah, below this one.
Switch true. Okay.
And then so the case in this case is we're going to use the condition in the above if. So the Boolean request.cookies is our first case.
Okay.
And then response rewrite, same body. And then you want to have a break. Always got to remember that, or it just falls through. And no, we're going to sit. No, that one's going to actually be the.
Oh wait, break is the word I was looking for. Wow, Birk.
Nice. I wish you had an emoji for beer. So we're not returning the response. We're gonna stick with like a single return for the most part. We return early up there if the path name doesn't match. But here we're going to write the default. So we can just the default is response equals next response dot next. And we do that above, so it's probably not necessary, but like it's going to gripe at you if you don't have a default, and that is the default, right? Like our default, if none of these conditions match, and just to kind of explain what happened here, we say switch, and we're switching on true, so we're just switching on a straight Boolean, and our situation is true. So anytime the case is true, it'll fall through into that one, and we need some quotes around that guy. So now we can stack cases, and you can think like, what are the different situations? What are the different cookies that we have set? That could be in play here that would cause the user to get a different homepage. And like for Egghead, it could be they're an instructor, or they prefer React, they prefer JavaScript. Like we can start thinking about like who this person is and what their current status is, or they've looked at our sales page but haven't bought.
Right.
So we can encourage them or show them, or like offer discounts. Like you can at this point do all sorts of fun fun things that are useful too. So like literally you can do things that are fun, but then you can also do things that are useful and hopefully mutually profitable from the value sense.
Yeah. Okay. So we have the ability to make decisions based on conditions. But right now we are kind of hard coding this stuff. So we could also check, like if we wanted to make another page, we could set it to false or whatever. But I'm assuming this is where
go ahead and set that to some other value, right? Like let's, I don't know if like let's I'm wondering because of the Boolean actually, like if it exists, if it's not undefined, would it be true? I don't know how
Oh,
I don't know how that's
interesting.
sort of casting. I would probably say cookies welcome equals true inside of the Boolean, but that's maybe redundant. That's how I'd normally format that.
Oh, should it be like that?
No, no, I'm going to probably do a text search at this point. And my code that I'm looking at over here, I'm using.
Oh,
Actually,
you're doing
I
it like,
I'm parsing it, but yeah, I'd check and see if that value is the string, unless I'm parsing it as like JSON.
okay, so that does the thing.
Yep,
This does the thing.
yep.
Does the thing. Okay. So, all right, we got it. We got it working. It's correctly responding to the value of our cookie, and now we want to start setting these cookies. I'm assuming
So
programmatically.
the cookie is an interesting thing, but then what if it's like remote data of some sort? That's where to me it gets really interesting. And this is where customer, and I was like, well, I'm using customer IO, but it doesn't actually matter. Like what the lesson here is that we are loading data from some remote source. So what's your like go to if you want like quick cloud data? Do you have an API that you use? Like things I go to are like Supabase, and I think of customer IO as a database in the cloud. Supabase, Hasura. It doesn't matter. Like
Right.
where, like where is your place that you go to? Sanity, Netlify CMS.
Yeah, whatever, right?
Like it doesn't matter at that point, but like what we want to do is actually load some data from some remote source, and we're going to use that to like check the current condition of the user. Customer IO is something you can sign up for. Like it I don't know. It's pretty easy to, and honestly, it's not that user friendly when you start using the API. So that's why it occurred to me that maybe using something else. I love Supabase. I don't know. What do you love right now? What's been fun on the data front for you lately?
I mean, I kind of bounced around between a bunch of them. I'm trying to think what I've been using most recently. Actually haven't used Supabase because I've been waiting for John Myers to come on this show.
Well,
He and I got
that's
one
not a
coming
great
up
one.
soon.
I'm just like if you have some way you get data currently, then
Let's do
some
Fauna
async
because Fauna is their sponsor.
Oh yeah, good
I
idea.
I have an account. I know that all works, and that way we don't have to think too hard about the Fauna stuffs. All right, so I'm logged in. I'm going to create a database, and we'll call this one marketing automation.
Yeah.
Put it in the US. Create. All right.
Yeah, this is the move over customer IO because we can because it doesn't matter. That's the whole point here. And you could literally like use the Twitter API. I don't know. Like you can use all sorts of data sources at this point.
All right. So let me do I'll just create a new file. We'll just do this db schema.graphql, and we'll put a what do we want? Like a user type. Give them an ID. Give them an email. And what else do you need?
I don't know. That would work. You're going to be the user, so we don't need like we at this point we can like maybe.
Oh, I'm the user. So what? Yeah, what do you want to switch on here?
Let's see. We use like technology customer. We can have well, user's fine. I'm just saying like we can like that like is customer basically.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So do a customer, whether or not they're a customer.
One of the cool things about like tying the email automation to this process is, and like it's really, and I think we've talked about this actually. I think like if I recall the previous time I was on here, we are talking about ConvertKit and like setting cookies and loading data from ConvertKit. And what's cool when I do that is when I send automated emails from a service, most of them have the ability to attach a user identifier to the link as a query parameter. So what's neat is like if I send out emails and they click that, when they come to the site, it's actually carrying that with them. So like that's a mode of persistence beyond the cookie, which is browser session. So if they click on their phone, I know who it is. If they click on their desktop, I know who it is. If they click on a computer at the public library, I know who it is, and can use that information accordingly. So we're not going to get that here, right? Like this is a way we're almost it's almost like creating a session and like having a logged in user at this point. So this is more useful in terms of like just a straight like dashboard versus marketing page kind of switch, because what we're effectively creating is a user, and then we're don't model your user sessions this way, please. Like use some other way to do this. But that's what we're ultimately doing, I think, is that mimicking that approach.
Yes.
Versus the email cycle, which I love, but is more complicated.
So I'm just going to take a couple notes here. That's going to be our endpoint. I need to set up some API keys. We're going to give this a server key, and we'll make sure that it's like next middleware. And this is going to share the key. So nobody mess with this right now. I think I can make it, can I make it read only? Whatever. We're not going to worry about it too much because, you know, it is what it is.
You get a lot of hack source. That's good.
Yeah, we're probably going to get hacked. Like give the chat 5 minutes. Can you just put in a .env and it'll just work, or do you have to do it a certain way?
It just works. Okay. Well, .env.local, I think it's
.local. Okay. Okay, and then we'll do like fauna API key and stick that in. I still can't figure out how to turn that dang thing off. Okay, so now we should be able to do, assuming I have access to fetch, I can go to my fauna endpoint. Oops. And we can hit that as post. We can give it headers of authorization, and that gets a, do I remember this off the top of my head, bearer, and then we put in the process.env.fauna API key, and I think that's all we need to send in the headers, and then we can do a body, and the body is going to be JSON stringify of a query and variables, which variables is going to be an empty object, and the query can be, we want to get the user. So let's go back over here and actually build this out. We can,
yeah, and at the end of the day, you're going to, like you have to make some assumptions about the user. Like you have it stored. We store it in a cookie, right? Like whatever the ID is. So the user ID is what we'd have in the cookie, and we'd say, like next user maybe is the cookie name or something like that.
What did I do wrong here? What? Oh, it's this ID. Is it? Hold on. I think I did a bad thing. Okay, you know what? I'm not going to fix that. I missed something in the GraphQL schema for Fauna that would like identify this as the actual ID field. But
personally, I like the other one better because sequential numerical IDs are guessable and are prone to more mischief than other types. So that's fine. And ultimately, we're going to want this in some sort of function like load user or whatever, and that's going to be async. And we also want to make sure that our middleware function that we return is also async, so we can do that type of thing in there.
Okay, so we'll go async. That means I need this to be, let's get a response. That's going to be, we'll await the fetch, and then down here we can do an if
and you got a
response. Oh, yeah. Okay, then we can throw a new error. Very helpful error. And I need this one. And then down here, if that works, we'll do one of
Fetch, you
those.
don't have to. Did you do the to JSON? Is that what the?
That's this one here.
Nice.
Is getting it. This is a thing I picked. I don't remember who I saw this from, but
I didn't know
this,
OK was a thing, but that is a cool one.
yeah, it's helpful for the quickest of error handling. And then I'm going to do one more thing here, which is to add the ID as a variable, so that
sure.
we can pass that in. And we'll pass in the ID like so. And then down here, so now what'll happen is we'll have to pass an ID into this function, and then that will send back whoever the ID is there. So then to use it in here, we could do something like customer equals await load user, and we can hard code that user ID for a second and console log it, and that'll let us know whether or not we did the thing. And that should happen on any request. So let's see if it worked. Where's my, this one? Here.
Yeah, nice.
Refreshing. It did the thing. Invalid database secret. I did something wrong. Oh, maybe I need to stop.
Yeah,
and
you got to restart.
the,
Like it doesn't pick those up.
There's end local. Okay. Good. And now variable ID, expected type of ID. All right, I can write valid GraphQL. Try that again. There is our user.
Nice. So now you can take that and instead of hard coding that, we can move that to our cookie, the ID that we're looking up. We're going to assume that we have the user's ID in a cookie,
okay,
versus in the application.
So let's add one. We'll say user ID. We'll put this in. We'll click all those same boxes. Good. Yes. All right. So now we have a user ID. And so in here we can get ID is going to be rec.cookies user ID.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll drop this in here. And theoretically speaking, when I refresh the page, we get, there it is. Okay, so then if I go and I switch this out to our other one, let's go to our collections. And here is, what? Okay, whatever. Go back out here, change our user ID. Then when I refresh the page, we see our other customer. So there we go. We're now looking up from a database as part of our middleware. It's pretty slick. All right. So now that I have this, what should I do with it?
So we're actually going to move that into that switch statement, right? Like we want to switch based on this, the like results. I don't know. We can load that before the switch statement. It's part of our cookie check. Basically, if you have a customer, then you want to rewrite. Like if you don't, so I'm probably going to check the cookie first. And if we have that cookie, if that cookie exists, so if it, like you can do what you did before where you just drop the Boolean in there, or I don't think we really need that welcome anymore either, but we can keep it because they're going to stack, right? Like the first one that's true is going to fall through.
Yeah,
so
that's true. Let's not do that.
That was just a test.
We'll check if the user ID
just exists at all. So I think you can remove that whole thing. So if it exists, and then we want to load it. So we want to move that customer, just the customer part, not the user ID part, into, because the user ID we want external because we need that before we start looking at cases. But if that's true, then we want to load the customer. We don't want to do superfluous async activity if we don't have the need to, right? Like if that doesn't exist, there's no need to send that to them.
Yeah.
Or check or get an error or handle errors. So we want to wait and do that this way.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
I've got
now if it is a customer and the current customer is, so you'd at this point, you'd also check to see if they are a customer. And this is where I'm also going to start thinking about how do I extract this? Maybe this is a helper file, that sort of thing. Something to note about middleware while we're talking about different things is you have access to some APIs, but it's restricted. It's a restricted environment like Cloudflare, like different people have these node runtimes, right? That are reduced node runtimes in these environments to be safer. So you can't just import everything under the sun and get it done. You
Right.
have to have like a constraint. And I know like fetch is okay, and there's some other things, but there's just limits. So
Yeah, because
um,
it would be like pretty destructive if we were trying to do like a bunch of file like FS like file system access
you might
and
even have that. Like I don't know
oh.
exactly what it is, but like there's like there are some limits and just something to be aware of. They can be like gotchas. Like if you import
Mhm.
stuff and it starts throwing weird errors, it's usually your imports. Like they're doing something like some browser access, even like as a I don't know. I don't fully understand it. I just know that you are in a limited runtime usually when you're in these environments.
Got it, got
So
it.
we can just say user.customer, but you can keep the equals true if that's what you like.
Yeah.
So then we can at that point we can write the response, right? Like we can do the so we can say response equals rewrite welcome because
Okay,
we're
we're gonna move this one
welcoming
here.
them if they are a customer.
Okay. And otherwise, we bounce them out.
Otherwise, it's not even going to hit the default at that point. If you're there, it's not going to hit the default, but it's not going to change it either because we have a default that we've done before. So we should be good. And at this point, because our customer is true, and you could switch them out. Now you'll see if your customer,
Okay,
if you are
so
a customer, it's switching it out.
I think the one that we are now is true, so this should give us welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh. I'm doing something wrong. Let's see. It says our customer is true. Oh, I know what I'm doing wrong. We gotta get
It's
the
a sub
data and
object.
then yeah, so let me actually return that out of our customer. And we will return data find, what was it? Data find user by ID. And that'll give us our actual customer. So now, what?
Uh-oh.
Oh boy. Oh boy. What have I done? I return response. What? Cannot read properties of undefined. It's no longer doing the thing, which means it is.
Yeah. What is data?
Data. Oh.
Data?
Data.
Love it.
And now we've got a customer. Okay. So let me.
And if you switch that out, we'll see the.
All right. So I'm gonna go grab my other user, which is this one. Drop it in here. Reload, and we go to the home page. Okay.
Yeah, and like that's. I mean, it's great. What could go wrong here? Do you think?
Like infinite things, I would assume.
What is
Well, actually, no. Hold on. Let me
what's a
think.
top handful of things that could go wrong at this point? Now that we're doing async stuff, because that always
Mm-hmm.
that's a can of worms, right? Like you start
Right.
doing that.
So, I mean, fortunately, we've got good safeguards here where if we don't
I skipped some of the stuff that like we would have been here for 3 hours, like I was, or losing whole days of work and sleep because we can't figure out what's going wrong and it's affecting our customers. We've solved some of those already, but there's more.
Yeah. So there are a couple things that I'm seeing here. Like if our request here fails, we don't have a catch. Like we don't have any way to catch that. So it would just blow up the whole page instead of sending a default response. If our user, we're not doing any checking to make sure that like this, I guess this would just return undefined. So it would fail and then break and then hit our return response. Yeah.
The try catch is a big one. Like generally speaking, I'm going to wrap all of this in a try catch because like if everything fails, I want to log it and send it to Sentry or whatever.
Yeah. So let's do a big try catch. We'll just take all of this. Catch error. If we get an error for now, we'll just console log it.
And I would just return response.
Yeah, and we'll return the response.
Oh,
so
yeah,
that way
go.
our app doesn't fail, but our customization fails.
Yeah.
And that is okay.
And technically, we just keep our single return response. We don't need both of them, and we could just like if something bad happens at the bottom, we return response. We don't need two of them. We just need one of them.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, we can do that.
Like out of all of these, because we're set in response as we are, we only need a single return response. We don't need to stack them up like that.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, so that gets us. That's looking okay. I mean, this is at least safe enough that like if we've done something silly,
work,
we
like,
at least just do nothing. It just returns the page.
Here's something that I learned while I was doing this is that when you, I gotta hold on just a second. All right. So if you're doing this locally, you're in you're in a specific runtime environment.
Right.
And if you do this remotely, you're in a different runtime environment with new restrictions. Locally, this could take 3 minutes for a response to happen. But when you deploy this, and it really depends on the environment where you're deploying it, so I can't tell you specifically. I used Vercel, and I assumed it was like a serverless function, and I went and read the docs and the limits there. And you do have a limit on your serverless functions. I think this goes all the way to Cloudflare or all the way to AWS or whatever. Like if you're using Lambda, like you have a runtime limit on how long these processes can spin. And some of them are pretty big. For this one, for middleware, as it turns out, and it took me longer than I care to admit to like finally get this. And I was crying on Twitter, and like their support's helping me, and everybody's doing that. As it turns out, unlike serverless functions where it's like an 8-second timeout or 15-second or whatever, you have exactly 1.5 seconds to return a response from this function, or it's going to time out. And that is because this is a middleware, and because you are running an edge function just for a specific purpose. The response timeout is 1.5 milliseconds. Mm-hmm. The actual function itself can after you return the response, you can actually still do work. So you can return the response, and you can still be like processing data or doing other things, and that can take up to like 15 or 30 seconds or whatever. Like you have this good amount of time. But if you do not return a response within 1.5 seconds, it throws an error and it logs nothing. And you get like, I got no clues as to what was going on. And it was only because I'm calling the customer IO API, which unlike like modern, like edge functions where it's distributed and it's close to the user. And this is actually kind of part of the issue. Those functions are getting distributed. So like folks in India and Africa were having a really hard time because the customer IO response itself took a while to return. Over 1.5 seconds. So I kept getting these times out. So what I needed to do was build a safeguard in around the fetch call, which in my case is, I don't know, I should probably just share a link, huh?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'll paste it in chat. So this is how I load the customer. And where do I give links to you? Is it Zoom?
No, I'm grabbing it right out of the chat there. Okay.
So here's my full like loader for customer IO. And at the top you have the fetch, which is kind of what you wrote, but you'll notice that there's some interesting work here. One, I have a timeout const that I'm setting. After I set a timeout variable, I think that's what I should look at mine. So I have timed out. Is it timed out? False. That's how we start. We go in and we look, and there's a 1.25 milliseconds basically. I had some padding. This is when I love to use comments. I'm not a big commenter in my code, but like this one I'm commenting because like how would anybody know otherwise? Should probably have a comment link to the docs as well. And then I have a set timeout. So I run the set timeout and I capture the ID of the set timeout. And what that allows me to do is cancel the set timeout later. And if set timeout comes, it says timed out equals true and actually just rejects the promise. So you'll notice it's wrapped in a promise up top, which is a async function wrapped in a promise. And that gives me resolve reject. Then we fetch and we have I used fetch, and then I'm capturing it like a promise. So I have return the response if normal, and if it's timed out, then we skip it because we've already sent a response at that point anyway, so no point. And then finally we clear the timeout ID regardless of what happens.
The dot finally is one that feel like I almost never need it, and then when I need it, I'm so happy that it exists.
Yeah, I mean, like in this case, you could just have that same thing on both of them, but it's just nice, right? Like to me, it
Hmm.
reads really well because promises can get kind of bulky, and you reduce repetition, but you reduce repetition in a way that makes things clearer, not in like
Hmm.
a really abstract way where I'm moving it out into some other location or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, so
then
that's I mean, this is useful. So I'm probably we got about like 15-ish minutes left. So we probably won't implement that here, but we'll put a link to this in the show notes for anybody who wants to look at setting up the timeout. Um, any
this is critical. Like if you are actually going to do this was one of the hardest to figure out. And I you can look in the link that I pasted is like our entire website, so you can literally see what we do. This is our production website, so we work with visible source, no
Mhm.
support implied or given. Um, that's the way this is, but this approach works really good. And after like I got it dialed in, and the little fail safe here, like I can do
Mhm.
this, and it's great. And the next thing I want to do, and we can do this now for what we're working on, is when we get that response, um, like what do you do with that information? And what I want to do is like once I have that user data, I
Mhm.
don't need to load it on every single page load. Like every time they come here, I don't need to load that. Instead, we can actually write a cookie too. So I can
Oh,
load that user data and then write that. So we have the ID, but then we can actually like write the user to a cookie in this response, and then it's basically cached at that point. So we can then load it, and then like if we have the cookie and it already has the data and the ID matches what the data is in the cookie, then let's just
right.
return that data instead of doing anything async, so we can make sure that we are giving the user the fastest response, which is what they do deserve, I think.
Yeah. So is there a way that I can do I like
So down basically, if you go to we have a little case there where we know we have a customer,
Mhm.
and we have if user.customer equals true, but that doesn't even matter. So even below that, so if user.customer, like if user, right? Like, so we can say if we have a user at all,
Okay.
we can then call response.cookie, and we're going to say with the string user, that's the cookie name. So
Like
you can
that?
call response.cookie is a function that
Oh, it's a
actually
function. It's a
writes
function.
that. Yeah, like response.cookie is a function call. You can call it in a couple of ways. It's also an object. I don't know why or what or how that works. And then I'm going to say JSON.stringify user.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So then that means that up here I would want to check.
Well, I don't even know if I'd need to do that. We can do that. I would do it like personally. I'm going to do it so where we have user here.
Uh-huh.
That's where I'm doing it, right? Like if we and the way I actually did it is I passed it into my load function. So I passed cookies customer or cookies user
Okay.
into my load function as a second argument, and then just handled all the like if it exists stuff in that particular, instead of just like that. And if it's blank, then we
Okay.
handle it in there. We're checking it later too, because we'll write it back regardless. But then like our caching is handled in our load function versus in our middleware. And usually like this load function is going to be off somewhere else for me, because I'm going to use it, because you can use this same load function. You can use this inside of with Next. If you have like a get server side props, for instance, you can use the same load function to do similar work in other pages kind of close. Or if you like in React, you could use React query or SWR or whatever, and use the same exact function
Okay.
to load data at runtime, not only on the server. There might be some issues having server cookies and loading some of this data from the client side. If it's HTTP only, I'm pretty sure you can only load that from the server and not the
Right. You
client.
can't access it with JavaScript, which is actually one of the things that I think is so cool about this, like serverless functions and middleware and stuff like that, is you get the security of HTTP only cookies, but
Mm-hmm.
you still get to use the JavaScript stuff just in a more secure environment. Like now
Yeah, and then
somebody
you can
can't write a
pass it
third party
through.
script that's like, give me somebody's email address because it won't run. But like your serverless functions, that's your code. You know what you're doing, and it's assuming you are not doing evil, which you shouldn't be. Chat.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
but assuming then you get secure options that still have all the convenience of working with JavaScript that you already know.
Yeah, and usually like like get server side props and that sort of thing is basically giving you a function that runs on the server it's similar to this middleware. This middleware is lower level than that, but they're all in the same chain, right? Like so I can run that and I can pass data from here to there, and you can rewrite with like query parameters and that sort of thing too if you wanted to, and like you can really have a good amount of data that you can pass along to the final request or whatever. And like I can load that user in a secure cookie. Which just is better. Like in like especially when you're talking about developers in the space that we're in, they're often looking at what you're writing in the cookies about them. So it's just good practice.
Yeah. So one question I have about this. So first, this is what I just implemented, which is I'm checking if the cookie exists. I'm parsing it if it exists. Otherwise, I'm setting to false. And then if I have a user, I'm just returning that.
Yeah. Just bail.
Do I need to manually expire this, or it'll expire once they leave the session, right?
By default, yeah, it's session.
Okay.
And you can if session works for you, that's fine. Or you can like set it to a time, which whatever you'd have to go look up the API.
And so like thinking for what I would probably do if I was building this in production, just if any of you are thinking about implementing this yourselves, I would probably set the cookie to live like a week or 30 days or something, but then you have to go into your user management stuff. And if somebody cancels their account, if they unsubscribe, if they do whatever user actions that would affect their user, you then also have to manage the cookie as part of that process instead of just letting it expire, which means that, hey, the next time they come back, they'll just pull the fresh data. But yeah, so this is all right. So this is cool. So this means then,
So a lot of times, especially with this one, right? Like I don't mind if sometimes I get this particular one wrong. Like if I'm because I'm applying middleware to the very root of my site, if sometimes that like misses the mark a little bit, I'm not as worried. And in my apps, I'm going to like load and write that cookie in other places also. So I'm going to still use get server side props on certain pages, and maybe even the welcome page, where the welcome page is going to use the same call. And if I've already been through this flow, that cookie is going to be cached, right? Like, so it's not going to affect get server side props. But if for some reason, like, and then I don't know, there's all sorts of, it's cached, right? At this point, we have to invalidate it and have a policy in place that makes sure our data is as fresh as it needs to be to make sure the user experience isn't broken. So that's kind of, it depends on the data at the end of the day, and what it is you're loading and who you're loading it for, I think matters a lot also.
Screwed that up. Here we go. That should actually do the thing now. So yeah, then we get back a cached user.
And you should check and see, does the ID match is another one. So like in your fetch, because if that's another thing that can happen, it could be two different users. So if it's not the same user, you need to load, and cached user ID equals will do the trick for sure.
Okay. So that does the thing. And then, so that's our user that is not a customer, right? So if I go in then and let's force the failure case. I'm going to pretend I'm a hacker, and I'm going to modify my cookie here, reload, and it did not hit the cache, and it's showing me the true thing. So that was a good check. I wouldn't have actually thought of that one until somebody told me that they were getting errors.
And that's, like the way I'm using it, where you can click on an email, and it's pretty rare, right? Like most of our devices are personal. I mean, as far as that goes, but like you can't guarantee that. So if somebody clicks on an email and somebody else follows up, I don't want to inadvertently or otherwise. And we don't use this to like expose user information anyway. It's always just like a switch, like, hey, you like JavaScript, so there you go. Or we're not even that sophisticated right now. Now it's literally, are you a member? Are you an instructor? Or are you anonymous? Or are you a non-member user? And that's kind of our segments. And one of the cool things, and I mentioned Brennan's course because I reference it a lot, is he talks about having a segmentation strategy before you even think about personalization. Personalization is an optimization on top of a foundation of strong segmentation, where you are segmenting your users into 2 to 5 buckets. Not too many, because like if you think about the switch statement, or how many times we're nesting ifs in this little example that we're doing. So every segment is a new facet that adds that, what is it, cyclomatic complexity to this decision tree, right? Yes. Like that is what you're stacking on top of yourself, your brain 6 months from now, all of your teammates, and ultimately your user base too, because if your complexity gets too much for you to understand, it is going to deliver bad experiences for your users. I think in terms of just your thing working properly.
One way that I've seen this done that I thought was really clever is uniform.dev did a cool thing. I had them on, let me just look at this instead of trying to. So we did this thing on personalization, and the way that Uniform does it is whenever somebody performs an action, they visit a page or they do a thing, it increases a score, right? So if you're watching a user and that user has a JavaScript score of 0, and then they visit the JavaScript sub page of courses, you can go, all right, plus 50 for JavaScript. And then if they go something else, they can go, oh, plus 50 for Go or whatever. And then you can, that way you're, instead of trying to say like, okay, so this person is a user and they like JavaScript, but they also subscribe to this email sequence and they visited this, whatever, like instead of trying to manage all these independent variables, you're just basically saying like, okay, any action either has no effect or increases or decreases a score for a certain like category, right? And so for a lot of sites, you can basically just operate on these scores and say, all right, so whatever their highest score is, sort that stuff to the top.
So we do that a lot, and that customer IO is fantastic for this, because you can dynamically update properties and it keeps a really nice database. So we do that across our topics, like we tag everything at the topic level, and then are increasing scores. And we're not using it very well, but like we've been doing this, and it's called it's like lead scoring is the marketing term, when you're thinking about it that way. And you can give them an overall score. So like we have say a React score or a JavaScript score or TypeScript score, whatever, and then we also have like a learner score, right? Like, so if you do anything, it adds to your learner score. And like when we do a marketing campaign, if your learner score is 0, like you haven't done anything with the site, I'm not going to hassle you with emails you don't want. Like you have to have some, is your learner score 5? Like we want to send emails to people that are interested in what we're sending them to.
Yeah.
And we want to show them what they're interested in and help them as much as we can. So we're not like, we don't want to be a pest. We want to actually help you like learn and do what you want to do, not like force you into, like an anxiety tunnel so you can buy or whatever. Just long-term, it works out better the more helpful we are as an organization. But that's a great approach. And Customer IO does a really, like, that's the reason I actually started using the tool. It has some great stuff going on, but like their ability to use it as a very lightweight database with a decent API. And then it ends up being friendly to members of your team that aren't developers, right? Like sending somebody necessarily to Afana or a Supabase or whatever. They're great applications, but they're really made for developers. They're like, maybe even out of the low code territory. And this is Customer IO, once it's set up, is very in the no code territory for other folks that aren't developers on your team, which is very nice.
Yeah, I do like the kind of the effectiveness of these tools that let you go, no code if you get into the UI, and then low code if you want to kind of integrate, and you can get pretty wild with API customization if you want to really build out some complex stuff. It's a hard abstraction to get right, but it's really exciting when it works. I'm also really glad that Chris picked up on the InSync reference, because I very much wanted to start singing when you did the bye.
I mean, if you feel that, always feel free. For me, anyway, like I'm here for it for sure. Yeah, and there's there's a lot of tools to do this. There's a lot of different ways to approach this. I think this core of what we talked about today is really powerful, though, and I got so excited when I saw middleware get announced. This was like the first thing that jumped into my head, and because it's a problem that I've had on our site and that I've hated across the internet when I'm like, why don't you just, if like, I'm a customer, show me the dang dashboard. Don't show me the marketing page every time. Like
Right.
it's annoying to me. And I'm easily annoyed though. So like, I don't take it too personally when sites do that to me, but like at the same time, it always has felt like it could be better. And I think we've lost a lot of that and a lot of our kind of client side and static site and all this stuff. And you can still get all the benefits of those things, like your static site generation. It doesn't affect that. You can do that all day long.
Mm-hmm.
You just, keep it simple though. That's probably like having the good segmentation strategy and understanding the like 1 to 5 different segments that you
Right.
are actually servicing. And, like it's something like this, I want to keep that very simple, and not, try to do, I don't know, like I get, you could probably abstract it and make it, like it less complex and not
Yeah.
so if statementy, with larger segments, and do fancier stuff. But like at this point, because of that 1.5 seconds anyway, like you are really, like you got to keep it lean.
For sure. We got a question from Tony. What's the customer list size that's the sweet spot to start paying for this kind of automation, or is it more like ROI based for you?
Oh, like when would I sign up for customer IO?
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I don't know. Like you need to have it, right? Like how are you gonna get by otherwise? And there's probably,
Mm-hmm.
like you can, as a developer, like you can go to something like Supabase that's probably going to be less expensive to get into. Um, and customer IO is kind of pricey, and something like ConvertKit, with their free tier is, I don't know if you get API access though. They know how to get the money from you, and I'm kind of spoiled because I have revenue, and I'm able to fund some of this stuff. So if you're talking about like I'm bootstrapping a business and I need to know when I should start paying,
Mm-hmm.
um, gosh, that's a hard question to answer.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's like, how serious are you about it too? Because like, I have things that I would love to go in and do more automation on, like, learn with Jason, but it's not my full time job. It's not something that I'm going to put tons and tons of effort into. And so spending a lot of money on automation for something I don't actually have the time or intention to fully support right now is not a good use of my time. But if something changes and I go full time on Learn with Jason, I'm suddenly going to be paying for a lot of tools like this to try to make the site more useful to people and make that stuff really work.
So I'm going to paste this in chat and just to talk about it, because I think that circles back to what we were talking about at the beginning. It's like, when do you automate? And this little workshop that Brandon gave, and he gave me permission just to essentially like spill the tea on the entire thing with this summary. But like he gets in there and it's automation best practices and recommendations. And like the number one thing he's saying is like, get in and do it the hard way, do it long form, like have a simple form that feeds a Google Doc, and captures emails, and then talk to those people. And don't worry about any of this and splitting when you're first doing it, and you're talking to people and you're designing a solution, and you start to gain momentum, as you proceed. And that is how you understand. It's like, okay, well, I'm actually servicing this. People are succeeding with what I'm offering. People are signing up. I'm actually helping them and guiding them along their journey. And if I did this, I could do that better, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
not even really thinking about yourself or your life, but thinking about their lives and what value you're bringing to their lives, instead of what you are, how you are improving your own through automation. And your life is important, but like I feel like your ability to automate some of Learn with Jason actually improves all of our lives, because your show is better. You get to think about higher level things and you actually do it.
Right.
So, like that is important. And that's thinking about the users, because if this
Mm-hmm.
didn't exist at all, then that would be bad, right? Like, and because you automate, you're able to do it, and you're able to do it longer and more consistently. So that's good for your users. So really, like, I think at the end of the day, you have to think about them
Mm-hmm.
instead of you. And is that, like, is this something that you're doing for yourself, or is it something that you're doing for the customers that you serve? And if you take that kind of service attitude towards the thing, I think you're going to find that it's better in general, and you run into a lot less ethical problems.
Yeah,
And like, it's just generally like the way I want to think about this sort of thing, versus like what's in it for me.
for
I
sure.
found that it follows pretty well. Like if you work like that and you really work on trying to provide value and bringing value to their lives, your own success kind of can trail that, fairly predictably. Like, like in terms of building a little base of luck to stand on. That's a
For
good way
sure.
to think about it.
Nice. Well, so that is all the time we have today. So let me do a quick teardown of everything here. We've had Jordan with us from White Coat Captioning all day doing the live captioning. That's at the homepage of the site, learnwithjason.dev. That is made possible through our sponsors, Netlify, Fauna, and Auth0, all kicking in to make the show a little more accessible. And while you're checking out things on the site, make sure you go and check the schedule. We got a lot of good stuff coming up. It's a new year, a whole lot of new content coming down. We're going to be talking to Alex about TRPC, which is something that I don't understand at all, and I'm really excited to learn more. We're going to get into Supabase next week. We're going to get into automation with N8N and a whole bunch of things that I haven't posted yet. Lots of good stuff here. So make sure you get over there. You can subscribe on Twitch. Follow is free, and you'll get notified when I go live. You can add this Google Calendar link, and it will show up in your Google Calendar so you know when the show is going to happen. Make sure you go and follow Joel on Twitter. That is a good time. It's just grumpy posts all day in the most pleasant way possible. And yeah, any final words for everybody, Joel?
Oh, I really appreciate it. I'm looking for, if you do like use this stuff, I'd love to see it too. So like if you make use of this thing, send it to me, and I'd like to check it out. If you have any questions too, or like you're digging into the code base, feel free to reach out as well.
Absolutely. All right, y'all, we're going to call this one done. So stay tuned. We're going to go find somebody to raid. Joel, thank you so much for your time. We will see you all next time.
Cheers.